Neat Nation, what's up? Hope you guys are ready to have a killer evening here. Just chilling together, drinking some whiskey. I'm gonna bring my guest on in just a second, and I mentioned before I think we're gonna have probably an hour's worth of broadcast today. Maybe a little bit more than that, but I gotta get up early. I gotta get up super early, hit the road down to Kentucky, which will be fun. I'm looking forward to it, but sleep is important. We need sleep. So I hope you all are doing well. I'm seeing stuff in the chat already, which is great. But because I'm gonna have a guest on tonight, if you guys wanna make sure that I get to your comment, please just throw a super chat on there. Again, that's a great way to support the channel as well. Just throw a couple bucks on there, and that will definitely go straight back into the channel. As the deeper I get into this thing, the more I realize actually how expensive it is. I made fun of Patreon in one of my videos. Bloggers and YouTubers getting up on the Patreon, but now I realize why they do that. It's kind of important, actually. It takes some bandwidth to make all this happen. But I'm not going to keep my guest waiting. He's on. He is Brian Bikey. He's on Instagram at Abandon Bourbon. And Brian and I are going to do some cool stuff together. So let me bring him on here now. All right, you guys should see him.
Neat
Brian,
Nation.
say hi to the people.
What's going on, people?
Yeah, that's the thing. I had to look this up.
I'm trying to figure out which way I'm supposed to point. I mean, you always you go this way,
no,
or
just
you just
up.
one?
Yeah, it's hand backwards, just straight into the nose. No, it's just one finger. It's a one finger salute. I did have to look this up though on the internet to make sure it didn't mean anything bad. Like I was like, wait, pretty much every hand signal, and it can be like used for racist initiatives.
I just assumed that there's supposed to be something to pop up. I just thought something's supposed to be here.
Yeah, right. Click the button up here to watch my next video.
That's right.
It is actually, I stole it from one of my very favorite TV shows, Psych. So there's a scene, there's scenes, it's a recurring bit in Psych where Sean, the main character, tells his best friend Gus that he's proud of him. And he says it with a deep voice, and he does this with his finger. Every time he says it, he says, "I'm proud of you. I'm proud of you." And so I stole it, and that's my salute to Neat Nation. But Brian, thanks for jumping on tonight. We're getting ready to do some cool stuff, right?
That's right. I mean, that's the goal.
That is the goal. I'm actually gonna meet Brian 2:30 tomorrow, Lord willing, at Bardstown Bourbon Company, where we are going to record the first episode of the Entry Proof podcast. So Brian and I started chatting about a month ago, and I said, I want to start a podcast. And Brian I actually knew through the coffee industry. We should start there, Brian. Let's take a step back. First off, everybody, we're starting a podcast. We're calling it Entry Proof. But Brian, why don't you tell the good people while I pour myself some bourbon how we started our relationship, our completely platonic relationship.
Well, I feel like there's a couple of different starting points. So I'm fairly certain I was familiar with Stone Creek, and were you who I talked with like way back when we were just chatting via like coffee consumer drinker guy before I even started competing? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so I mean, I would like send you some stuff because you had a podcast.
Yep. That's right.
And
so like way back when I did a coffee podcast, I usually put abandon in front of whatever my hobby is. So abandon coffee, abandon chocolate. But abandon coffee is the one that, got a decent following, and that I've kept up with kind of just as my personal feed for 6-7 years or something like that.
Yeah, you've had that for a long time now, and you got some followers for sure on that. What were you up to? What are you at now? You were at like 60,000.
It was like 52 or 53, and then just as I stopped posting content, as I just like got actually working into the coffee industry, it just kind of fell off as attention kind of fell off of it, and people were less interested in not the same thing all the time. So I mean, we kind of casually knew each other through that, and then we had a mutual friend that I had played in a band with, who moved up to the area and became your all's biggest fan, your biggest customer, if you will.
Yeah. Ethan Amarine. So
Mhm.
doubtful that he's in the chat, but you never know where that guy
Yeah,
will show
doubtful.
up.
Never know. I
Yeah.
should have sent him this link. I can still shoot it over to him.
Yeah,
I'm going to do that
yeah,
right now. I'm going to shoot it over
You
to him.
should. You should.
He's going to,
Yeah,
I think he's going to have one of those mind exploding sort of moments.
maybe. You are cutting out a little bit, Brian. You're doing okay so far, though. So Brian and I did have some issues, squad, getting the feed to run smoothly, which, I mean, because we're doing a podcast, we want to bring a lot of that to you guys in video when we can through live interviews and whatnot. Excuse me. But we got to get the internet figured out. We'll make that happen for sure. Chasing Giants hit us with a little super chat here. So shout out from South Australia to the USA,
Cheers,
the
sir.
home of Hitter Bourbons. Love your channel, dude. Wow, that's awesome. Glad you could tune in. What time is it there? It's got to be like 8 o'clock in the morning, right? Or I don't know. It's hard to keep track of what the time does when you're like
Right.
that far away.
Especially like your clock. I mean, I try and look at your clock, but I see bottle labels the right way, but the clock is the wrong way. Am I seeing this right?
You are seeing this right, yeah. That is definitely the mystique of my clock, which I've talked at length about in live streams past. But then I made the guarantee that I just wouldn't remark about it. So it's neat that you noticed that my clock is weird. But that's all I can. That's all I'm legally obligated to say at this point.
That's okay. I wanted to make sure that it wasn't a me thing.
It's not. It's not. I get a comment or 5 on every video that says, "Dude, what's up with your clock? Your clock is tripping me out." And I mean, that's kind of the point of it, actually. All right. Well,
Right.
let's go back to these origins. So you were a coffee connoisseur, passionate coffee geek. Started a podcast.
Right.
That podcast won an award in the Foremost Coffee publication as the best coffee podcast. Right? Is that correct?
That's right. Yep.
That is right.
That is correct.
So Brian and I knew each other because he knew I was at Stone Creek, and then I knew he was doing his thing. Of course, I was aware of his Instagram feed for coffee, and then you got involved in coffee yourself professionally.
Correct.
Why don't you talk about that?
Yeah. So I mean, I first I'm originally from Louisville, but lived for about 11 or so years in Cincinnati. Went to school there. Got interested in coffee there, and then started doing some moving around for jobs. We moved from there up to Northern Ohio. Went from Northern Ohio down to Dallas, and Dallas here to Louisville, just to start working with Quills. So I had a buddy who worked there, Michael Butterworth. He was, Quills at the time was looking to change things up, add some folks to the leadership team, help take Quills in a bit of a different direction than they've done before, and that's that. I mean, I've kind of juggled several different hats at the company since then, and right now I kind of oversee coffee program, bringing in some green coffee and drinking whiskey at night.
Yeah. Unrelated the whiskey and the coffee.
Unrelated.
So so I've known Brian forever, and when I wanted to start a podcast, I reached out to him because he had started the Abandoned Bourbon feed on Instagram. And the unique thing about Brian is he is he doesn't do anything halfway, which I resonate with that. And that is that when you get into something, you go hard, and that's evident from your feed. I do not know anybody who is a better hunter of bourbon right now, based on what you post, you're able to find, than you are. I kind of chronicle my finds more or less for the grams and through the channel, so people are aware of the struggles of finding dank stuff in Wisconsin, but you have no trouble finding dank stuff in Louisville right now. Why don't you?
Right, and that's what I think is interesting.
Yeah. So you and I talked a little bit about this a couple of weeks ago.
Yep.
Why is it interesting, and how? Because I'm sure there are people in Kentucky who are still like, "What's with this guy? How is he able to pull these bottles?"
Right. Well, I mean, and I will say, I mean, I could give you a list of folks who pull in town much more than I do. But I'm content with what I end up finding. You know, moving back to Louisville, I wasn't a big drinker, but at that time if I would drink, I was more into cocktails. And my problem with cocktails is it kind of costs a lot to keep your bar cart full. And so I'm like, all right, well, I got to get some more gin. So then I go through a season of gin drinks because, I just bought gin, or I bought some sweet vermouth. What can I do with sweet vermouth? So I'm going from tiki to gin base to brandy, whatever. And then I just started thinking, well, I'm here in Kentucky. I should probably start drinking Kentucky straight whiskey, bourbon, rye. And that's about it. I started to try and pull into what some of the similarities were to coffee and to whiskey. You get a lot of people who are coming in because of tourism to Louisville to go on the Bourbon Trail, to visit distilleries. And I started thinking, people they're writing us emails. They're saying, hey, can we come see the roastery? But I wanted to find a good way to communicate to them in language they're already hearing while they're on the Bourbon Trail. So that just helped me while I was digging through that. It allowed me to keep doing stuff in coffee, but then also just by nature get deeper into whiskey.
Yeah. And so you in particular are a very talented taster. So as I looked at possible bourbon podcast candidates, I didn't have multiple actually. I thought immediately of Brian. Like Brian's in Louisville, he's in the motherland. He is a coffee person. We have a lot in common in that way. We have Ethan in common, obviously.
That's right.
And then Brian brings some specialization in the tasting and some relationships to the party that I just don't have being in Milwaukee. So of course, if I'm going to produce something, just like the videos, if I'm going to produce a podcast, I want it to be awesome. And when I reached out to Brian, he's like, well, that's funny that you should mention that because, I've thought about doing this myself, actually, and planned on it once, but it just didn't materialize. So, the timing was right for both of us to be like, all right, let's give this thing a whirl. And the more we just talked, on Zoom or Google Hangouts or whatever, it became pretty evident that if we just have bourbon in our hands, we think we can probably make some pretty rad content for you guys.
That's right.
And
which
so
I was a little,
started.
And it's weird. It's interesting that we're joining for the first time for your fans, the audience, to be tasting through a product. Because when I was talking to you about it, I was excited. It was, I love tasting whiskey. I love talking about whiskey. And you're like, nah, man, we're not doing that on the podcast. We're not going to be one of those podcasts. I was kind of like, all right, well, let's see where this goes. We'll keep talking.
Yeah, so what I said, I said we're not going to be exclusively just breaking down the finer, nuanced tasting notes of whiskey. It has to be accessible. It has to be interesting. I think that's what I said. I get bored watching tasting videos and reviews that don't talk about like why a brand's important. Why should I buy this brand instead of this brand? Like, can we compare brands and talk about like, the upside of this or the downside of that or the rarity of this and that, blah, blah, blah. So what I don't want to be is just exclusively tasting. That said, this particular whiskey that we will taste, which I do not have a bottle of. A few people messaged me after I said what we were tasting tonight, and they're like, did you get a bottle? And I said, no. I have a sample. So Brian's got the bottle. It's the new Jack Daniel's Barrel Proof Rye, which has been, people are all about this product. We're going through warm-ups, which we'll talk about those first. We got to get that palate warmed up,
Yeah.
And then we're going to taste this really rad product and talk about, why it's special. Because when I asked Brian, hey man, have you had the Jack Daniel's? Brian, I don't know if you remember this, but you alluded to Booker's Rye. Like, you're like, not that it's Booker's Rye, but you did drop the name Booker's when you were making a comparison.
So, which is really interesting because you asked if for tonight you wanted to talk about, if I wanted to talk about and I've had 2 barrels now. So most recently, my friend Chris gave me a sample from a barrel that released just across the river in Indiana. But the first time I tried it, when I mentioned you Booker's, was a sample. I don't remember the state. I'd have to ask the guy, but it was another friend in town, and he gave me a sample. But he's like, I was going to sell it, but I you've got me thinking that I should open it. Here's a sample of it. In that bottle I won't spoil it, but that I told you was reminiscent of Booker's Rye. My friend Chris, who had the Indiana bottle, he couldn't get me the sample, so I didn't know that we were going to do this episode necessarily today. And then the guy who gave me that first taste of it, that's this bottle right here. So I will get to revisit that
nice.
epic rye pour and see if it does it again.
What's the serial number on yours?
So I think you mean this here. That's the only number that I found. This is BPR. Is that how it starts?
I don't know.
This is 22249. I don't know if that's
this
right.
is different. What's your proof? I got 132.5 proof.
130.7.
Okay, well, we're at least in the ballpark. But yeah, we're going to be tasting 2 different single barrels. Sorry, squad, but we'll analyze this thing for you. Oh, okay, great.
It's 20-06889.
Okay, mine's 966, so it's probably 80 barrels different or so.
I saw a guy who was looking for more, and he was working up a spreadsheet. You may be familiar with this. I don't know a whole lot about it. He was saying, I'm looking for bottles of this that fill in my spreadsheet of proofs. And it was categorized by the ink color, because apparently there's maybe something to do with what color ink they're written on, or at least that's what some of the bourbon guys are talking about, or the rye guys, I should say.
The people who drink this whiskey
are talking about what color marker.
Yeah, we're going to get into this in just a second. First, I did get another super chat from David King. David said, Drew, if you make it through Kentucky down to Tennessee, hit me up. We can tour some Tennessee distilleries, my friend. I'm in Chattanooga.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't think I'm going to make it down that far, but in starting this podcast, Brian and I are going to do some stuff in person, some stuff remote. So I imagine every few months I'll be taking a long weekend and recording some episodes. And I'm debating about you know what? Here's what we're going to do. I'm not going to tell you anything today about the episodes we're recording, but I will post pictures and content on Instagram over the next few days to keep you guys satisfied, put it that way. And also, if you have not already done this, but you should go follow Entry Proof Podcast. That's what it is, right, Brian? Our Instagram.
Your guess is as good as mine. I think that's what it is.
Okay, we haven't done anything on it yet, but we certainly will over the next week. So Entry Proof Podcast. Pretty sure that's what it is. You set it up,
that's
Brian.
Right.
Yeah, obviously this is.
I absolutely did, and I forget everything about it. We're gonna get there.
Yeah.
We're gonna get there.
We haven't officially launched yet. We haven't even posted an episode.
I'm not even logged in. What is going on with me?
Just the members of Neat Nation get this preview. You guys heard it first, literally before my own father. And my dad, generally stays up to speed with what I'm doing. All right, Brian, what did you pregame with tonight?
Well, I'm on my second of those two, but the first thing I did pour was just a little bit of Tennessee Release 2 from Nashville Barrel Company.
Coolio. Heard great things about their stuff, but have not had any of their picks.
Yeah, I've got some samples you'll probably be able to try when you're in town. Some good.
Yeah, well,
MVP.
I'm also looking at the Chessman behind you and the cheesy gold foil. I'm sure there's only so much I can drink in 3 days, but.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't talked a lot about logistics of this venture, so I need to know if I'm packing stuff in the car in the morning. We'll have to figure that out.
Yeah, so we mentioned at that first place. Go ahead. Yeah, we'll come back to that other stuff, the logistics. I'll call you from the car.
No, it's fine. I did another little palate taster of Michter's barrel strength rye. So.
Oh yeah, which year was that?
I believe that one's 2020.
Okay, mine's a 2018, but that sounds. I'm gonna have just a tiny spot of this before we move on to the Jack rye here.
Just a tiny spot. I just kind of wanted to have that be the last thing I remember before going to that Jack.
Sure. It's helpful if you're going to evaluate the quality. Yeah, my first, man, the nose on the Michter's barrel strength is redonk. Super good.
So good.
First one I had was a Four Roses pick, OBSF, 9-year-old. And I'm drinking this one because I've got a lot of the Four Roses barrel strengths, and I actually wanted to get this one out of the house because I had tasted this one and it's okay, but it's from Discount Liquor here in Milwaukee, and they unfortunately, like, I hate to crap on a local liquor store, but I've not been thrilled with Discount's picks. But the worst Elijah Craig pick I ever had was from Discount Liquor.
Oh no.
Which, yeah, I would have rather had just standard small batch. It was rough. It was hard to drink. And this is not bad. I mean, it's, probably a step above your everyday single barrel. But relative to some of the other Four Roses single barrel picks I've had, man, there's some I just absolutely love.
Right.
And yeah, so that's what I had for starters. Good, like, yeah, every day kind of crush it, kill the bottle, move on. But the fruity sweetness on this Michter's barrel strength rye is legitimate. If you guys ever get an opportunity to grab a Michter's barrel strength rye, you should do that. Brian, how many different of the Michter's 10-year ryes have you had?
Only like one, honestly. The tins I'm not incredibly versed in. It was only maybe a couple months ago when I first had the Michter's tin bourbon for the first time.
What did you think of the 10-year rye? Because that's generally regarded as the better of the two releases between the bourbon and the rye.
Yeah, I think it was good. I don't recall it all that much. I don't remember the context that I was drinking it in, but I know that
one of those
we were waiting in line for the. Yeah, but the bourbon I tried at like 4 a.m. while waiting in line for the Angels Envy Mizunara release, and it was the 2020 M10, and my buddy was like, "You got to try this one," and so I tried it, and again, I don't know what to compare it to because I've not had one previously, and actually, I have had a of M10 rye because he let me try the 2020 rye as well, and I thought the bourbon was better than the rye for 2020.
Interesting.
It's like a little bit soft. It had some like kind of floral qualities. It was not at all what I expected. It was very pleasing.
Cool. Okay. Neat. Let me hit a couple comments here, and then we'll move on to Jack. William Wiley, Drew, did you get the samples I sent you? I got an email saying it was delivered. Yes, I did. I don't know if I got them yesterday, William. I've got a whole slew of stuff now, so maybe I didn't. I'm not sure. I'll have to check, but I will confirm with you. I'm trying to confirm with people when the stuff lands. So I've got probably 30 craft whiskeys now to keep that series going, and we may get to a couple of those tonight. And I'll update the show notes, obviously, if we do that. So far, I've tasted 8. The goal is to taste 100 in 2020. I've tasted 8. I've got probably 30 more, so you guys are really helping that journey. I appreciate that. It's going to be fun. And then somebody else. Oh, Rod Spina showed up. Said, you'll be announcing some bourbon coffee crossover experiment, right? Undoubtedly at some point. But if you're just joining the show, Brian is on the podcast because, while he's, of course, in coffee, the announcement is we're starting a podcast together. And our cadence, our planned cadence is to do an episode every 2 weeks. Why? Because, again, this is side hustle type stuff right now. Neither one of us plans to make this vocational. We're doing it because we love it. So every 2 weeks we'll drop an episode of the Entry Proof podcast. And I don't know. We'll see how many interviews we get. But whatever interviews we do, we want to make them really interesting for you guys. And as conversational as something like this, live stream, it's just got to be real. It's kind of the deal. Real and interesting. That's the goal. A couple more super chats. So again, thanks, squad. If you guys want to support the channel and or support this new podcast, because we don't have Patreon right now, you can support either by dropping a super chat that's in the live chat feed on the right. Click that $sign. assign a dollar value, and that will go directly into either the equipment we had to buy for the podcast, or travel expenses. The equipment was pretty expensive, so we're going to be paying that off for a while. And then another way is you can get down.
We'll get there.
Yeah, we'll get there. It'll be fine. You can get down in the show notes. There is a link to buy a neat Keep It Neat t-shirt. So I think we probably sold 30 of those. I got to actually reorder now. I ordered 50 originally. There's one large left, and then we've got medium, XL, and 2XL still. So 2 ways you can support if you would like. Tom, thanks, man. Tom also sent samples. Tasted those, I think, before I actually... No, the first 1 through 4 were from Tom. But Tom said, excited for the new collab. Welcome to Neat Nation, Brian. I die inside every time I type Neat Nation. It's a little cheesy, but you know, we actually almost called the podcast Neat Nation, so it would have been fun.
Yeah.
Eric Sawyer, local
which
guy.
is like it's cool in like a XM radio sort of way.
Right. Or like I said, the inspiration behind the Neat Nation was the Colbert Report, Stephen Colbert's Comedy Central show before he went to late night. I guess it was kind of late night, but I loved that show so much. And his nation was, what did he call his nation? Yeah, he just called him Nation, I guess. Colbert Nation. Anyway, love that show, and I steal from a lot of things. Bottom line, I heard once the best artists steal really well, and I just try and carry that with me. But steal ethically, obviously. All right, Eric Sawyer hit us with a super chat. How many Stone Creek honey butter biscuits do you eat a week? Actually, that's... I'm not a big biscuit guy, actually. My wife loves biscuits. If I go for something, our scones are hard for me to turn down. Occasionally I'll get in a Danish mood, but I'm scone, team scone, actually.
Now, see, I didn't know about these biscuits, though. I mean, like, how early are you leaving in the morning? Like biscuit early in the morning, or like pre-biscuit early in the morning?
Unfortunately, I'm on the south side of Milwaukee, and there are no cafes south of me, so...
It's okay.
Yeah, I'm leaving too early to get you a biscuit.
It's okay.
All right. Chat says, are we doing Rise tonight? Yes, we are doing Rise. Finishing up this sippy sip of the Michter's Barrel Strength 2018 rye, and then Brian and I are going to talk about the Jack Daniel's release, which is, let's just talk about how interesting this was. So Jack's been turning up the volume on their ryes, recently. Yeah. First, there was like the everyday rye release. Then there was the single barrel rye, and then this year they hit us with the barrel proof rye. But I was surprised at the fanfare that came with this barrel proof single barrel. Like, I did not expect anybody to love it as much as they do. I know people are coming around to the barrel proof single barrel standard Jack releases. I almost said bourbon. Whatever. But I was surprised at how much people love this barrel proof rye. Were you? Brian, were you surprised by that?
Yeah, so I don't even Jack barrel strength whiskey prior to this. Maybe I have at a tasting or something. I know that I have a couple of friends who are they sound jazzed about them, but I don't hear them talk about it that much. And then I've got another group of friends that they like try and keep it under wraps because they're like, this is the best bang you can get for barrel strength. I haven't explored that avenue, but I do know that when the rumblings came out for the rye, I had several friends that were like, I gotta get that. And every time they're like, I've gotta find it. And a lot of the guys are going after it, at least, locally, or trying to find it. But Kentucky, I've not seen any yet.
Yeah, I haven't seen any in and around Milwaukee. A few members of the nation have been looking around Milwaukee as well, and we have thus far chalked up a zilch. So I don't think it's hit Milwaukee yet, so just stay on your toes if you are around me, and we'll see if we can land some here. But in the meantime, at least
I will interject quickly. I'll interject quickly and let you know that Ethan did share the head explodey emoji. to the link, so he at
Nice.
least has seen what is going on. If you are
Good.
watching, Ethan, good. Thank
We,
you.
we love you. We love you. So I have to thank Rob White for sending me my sample. Rob sent me some absolute gems, which I will either taste here or on Instagram in the coming weeks. I may hit one other of these tonight, actually. He sent me Jack Daniel's Barrel Proof Rye, this year's edition of Midwinter Night's Dram, and then 2 different barrels from the Sam Houston 14-year release this year. So what a swell package that was. So thanks a lot, Rob. And as I mentioned, a lot of other members of the nation have sent me samples as well. In the chat, I saw Tom, I saw William Wiley, so swell peeps.
I got to shout to my friend Zach, who not only, when I asked him for a sample, he's like, dude, I'll just leave you the bottle. You just give it back to me. I'm like, dude, I'm only going to pour like a little bit. He's like, doesn't matter. Just you take it. Just give it back to me some other time. So appreciate it, Zach. I don't think he's watching, but I'll relink him to it.
That is an immense amount of trust, for sure.
That's a bourbon. That's a bourbon karma, a feat right there.
Mm-hmm. One of the speakeasy. So the speakeasy is a Facebook group on Facebook, obviously, in the Wisconsin area. It's the speakeasy _WI, and one of the admins shared my post, or shared that I was going live tonight. So whoever did that, admin of speakeasy, who posted that, thank you very much. Appreciate that. We got, how many we got in the chat right now? 132 peeps in the chat. Thank you guys for joining us. Hopefully this is not a waste of your time. We will get to this Jack Daniel's single barrel proof rye right now. All right, I'm pouring it. I'm going. Enough beating around the bush.
Ooh, let's go.
There's a little, what in the world? Oh, the little like seal top popped out of the cap.
Where's this at?
Yeah, just put it there. That's nice. At least you got the bottle. I had to just rip an image off of Google Images. But then this sample from Rob is a full 2-ounce sample. So Rob, you are a hero, gentleman and a scholar, you know, that kind of deal. Todd Trent says, Droopy Whiskey, have you had Redwood Empire Lost Monarch? You are the second person to ask me that. And no, I have not. One day, because I keep hearing pretty decent things. I imagine that one will show up this year in my 100 craft whiskeys journey. Just because now that's 2 people who asked. Wow. That smells good. So generally, right? I stay away from Jack Daniel's products because I do not like the banana note. Banana is not really for me. And it's Old Forester, I'm kind of hit or miss on. Like, I don't like it when an Old Forester product shows up with a lot of banana. Like, I have a standard single barrel here that I tasted when I bottle popped the barrel strength single barrel that I have. And I have not gone back to this because it's so banana heavy. Like, it's just like Scene in the Jungle Book with all the monkeys. That level of banana. Like, a flock of monkeys eating bananas. That's what we get with that one. So, Jack, the single barrel strength, I also got a lot of banana, which is why I'm like, whatever. The rye, right. I get a suggestion of banana in there. It's there, but it also comes with a depth, oaky, brown, sugary, burnt sugary age that makes me go, well, okay, now we're in the dessert. We're in the dessert department. We're in creme brulee with some... It's like they put a slice of banana and then sugar in the raw, and then they bruleed the crap out of that, and that's what we're smelling right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting you say that because, it's like bruleed banana is definitely, creme brulee and bruleed banana specifically are both there. I do get, again, for you all who didn't catch it earlier, we are drinking from 2 different bottles, so maybe our tasting notes will be kind of similar. Maybe they won't. I just watched Dad's Drinking Bourbon. They did a little bit about it, and they made it seem like theirs was lightning hot. So we'll wait till we get to the palate to see. But so far, my nose is incredibly approachable and very inviting.
Yeah, I would say it doesn't convey the proof, the 132.5 proof. I'm not getting that much alcohol up on this nose. So that's, yeah, generally great and exciting. Let me, couple super chats here. One from Rob, just continuing to contribute to the channel. Thanks, man. Joining you, Drew. He's the one who sent the
Cheers,
sample.
Rob.
Glad it got there safely. Hoping you and the fam are swell. I am swell. I'm doing okay. I posted on Instagram. Last week was rough, health scare, and I've been like battling the anxiety actually ever since that because I still don't have a diagnosis for what's causing my issue. But my doctor said you don't have anything to worry about. Let's just try and figure out what's going on. I'm like, okay, well, as long as we don't know what it is, that's causing me some anxiety. So I'm starting to feel better. Trying to emphasize sleep, but yeah, anxiety is a piece of crap and not fun because it feels like anytime. Yeah. Anyway, we won't go down that road. I won't. But
No, it's fine, but it's good to know. When you had let me know whether we have to do a rain check on visiting and how serious things might be. But yeah.
Roger Main says, if you're really into rye, Buffalo Trace rye recipe is awesome. Roger also dropped a super chat. Thanks, Raj. So here's a question. Brian, maybe you know this. So I've been reading that Saz rye is distilled in-house, but E.H. Taylor rye seems to be a sourced product. Is that your understanding?
It's not my understanding. I thought that EH was in house, but I thought it could potentially be questionable that it was the same recipe. What stinks about that is that there's charts that float around that show mash bill, but I don't know how much of that is completely valid because I thought it was still pretty tight-lipped.
Yeah, it seems like they keep it tight-lipped, and I've heard, so Take Review, T8KE.review, he really built his presence on Reddit, and then he started a thing recently on Instagram/YouTube, and he had claimed that it came from Barton, that it is Barton distilled rye, the E.H. Taylor rye. So yeah, I'm confused. I actually have no idea. It would be great to ask somebody, but I don't know. Let me check the bottle real quick. And you know what? We'll get to that. I'm all over the place tonight. Let's taste this. I already tasted it. I was surprised on the nose of this Jack rye how unspicy it was. Like I don't get a lot of rye in there. Like, oh, it smells like a well-aged bourbon with banana notes.
Yeah, I think you get that banana tone, but it's not overpowering. I mean, it's the same way you would get. Well, I don't want to say it's the same way you would get in like an Old Forester because some are very heavy. It's definitely there, but then kind of sweetness takes over. It's got, at least my same, a little bit of wood on the front. Mm-hmm. It translates kind of into leather and a little bit of that barrel char in the finish. But then what it goes through is like caramel, raspberry. Just a lot of sweet flavors and a little bit of fruit in there too before it gets back to that kind of leather and that char in the finish, but it puts all the flavor together in a really nice package.
Yeah, I get some figgy, like I get big sweetness up front that is like maple syrup and figs. Mm-hmm. And then I get some bruleed banana that definitely carries over. And then I actually get some reminiscence of, there's a retro nasal experience that you get from Saz that I get a little bit of here, sort of this wafting of aroma in the back palate that I don't get in any other rye, but I get it in this one. So I get it in Saz, and I actually like even baby Saz. I kind of crave it periodically. And I get some of those. I actually can't describe it right now. Let me think about how to describe that. Bottom line, I think this is a really, really good product.
Yeah, this particular barrel is lightning, like electrifying kind of spice. It gets to it very quickly. It's not a negative. It's not seen as hot. It's not really lingering, but it just kind of slices into the palate and then has all this sugariness. Like I said, it's got some of this raspberry. It's got some other sweet to it, and then as it finishes, it has this kind of like sweet vermouth kind of linger. So like maybe like a stewed, kind of some stewed fruit, a little bit of ferment, a little bit of wininess before more of that like kind of barrel char, at least. But it does remind me when I had first told you that it reminded me of Booker's Rye. Now I don't have it in here, but I could go get it to compare. But what I liked most about this,
save that for when I get into
save that. What reminds me the most of Booker's Rye is having, it's not uncommon for ryes, for some of the ryes, especially, the barely legals, to be sweet forward. But what I find in Booker's Rye that I find in this bottle specifically takes me on a roller coaster on the palate, and not a lot of whiskeys do. There are complex pours, there are dry pours, there's sweet pours, there's kind of some one-dimensional pours. This one just kind of, and I think it starts with that spice, it kind of just cuts through. It's got some sweet notes. It kind of just takes you almost on a roller coaster on the palate, which might sound stupid, but that kind of journey just kind of pulling me in all different directions. I don't find that in a ton of products.
Yeah, when I tried Booker's Rye, granted it was probably 3.5 years ago, I did get more spice on it though. Like this one is really, really sweet, and it's hot. In my particular barrel, I'm not getting the level of spice that you're pulling out of yours. It's got depth. It's well aged for sure. It's got heat and sweetness in balance, but I actually want more spice out of mine, as wonderful as it is, because it's a really fantastic whiskey. Cameron says, is it just me or is not Drew super laggy? Yeah, so Brian, I think that you mean Brian. Yeah, Brian is a little bit laggy. We knew that going into tonight. If he gets super, super rough, we're just going to cut him and close it without him. Sorry. We'll get that figured out as we go on. There's growing pains. Appreciate your patience for sure. For sure. So if it gets to the point where we have no idea what he's saying, we'll cut him. And he'll just have to watch with you guys. Watch me drink whiskey. All right, let me see if I can pull anything else out of here before we move on. Brian, why don't you do a little self-reflection? You mentioned you got into bourbon, sort of moving back to Louisville, and being like, I should probably drink straight whiskey. It seems to be a big deal around here. How did you go from that to, you're all in, balls to the wall, hunting everything, trying to come up with Booker's 25, that's a big step to go from, oh, okay, I'll drink bourbon to I got to have everything.
Yeah.
So tell me, walk me through
I
that
had
journey.
a buddy. Yeah, I had a buddy who I knew from several circles. So we were into coffee. I had sold him a coffee grinder before. We just knew each other online. We were both into craft chocolate, and we were both into music. And him and his wife were coming to visit Louisville, and they stopped by the cafe, and we just had some pours. So I think Blade and Bow was one of them, maybe Stag Junior. And I think once I started to experience some more bourbons than ever I had, I think I had like a Rittenhouse Rye and maybe a couple of other bottles. So I started to find a couple of local whiskey groups. And then again, here in Louisville, there's just a plethora of releases. So much different than what you talk about in Wisconsin. So I think it's easy to escalate from that point.
Yeah, for sure. This comment was amazing, and I can see it actually in the video. because you're just getting hat bill, and so like if you're gonna lean your head back a little bit. Sorry, I saw that, it made me laugh. I had to show that. Yeah, it was good. There's not that much hair under there though. I could probably let me see if I can do this. No, so I can probably throw it out pretty good. I've got a lot, like some volume. Yeah, there we go. We're gonna call this Afro Night Squad. I'm super tired. We're having fun right now. Dan Barber says Brian and at Brian/not Drew really enjoying this collab. It's gonna be dank, y'all. I mean, we're pretty jacked about it. The commonalities we have from our backgrounds. We actually have some personal commonalities as well. But the coffee and the bourbon is probably enough to go on for a long time. And so it's going to be great. And
I kind of like being called not Drew more than Brian.
Yeah, so we're probably going to record, how many episodes do you think we're going to get done? At least 3. 3 at the bare minimum.
I was thinking, I thought we had 5 or 6 ready to go.
Well, yeah, I mean, that would be great if we can get to 5 or 6 episodes when I'm down there, but that's probably not going to happen.
Right.
I mean, because we're going to, good grief, guys. My hair is just not cooperating. All right, there we go. Let's go for a run. So we've got, all right, I'll tell you guys the first one. If you stayed this long, you've listened to us talk about this stuff for 46 minutes, good for you. First stop tomorrow, 2:30, we are at Bardstown Bourbon Company. And we are going to be interviewing and tasting with Dan, what's Dan's last name, Brian?
Callaway.
Dan Callaway, who is the director of product development and hospitality. No, vice president of product development and hospitality at Bardstown Bourbon Company. So that's going to be pretty rad. And that's how we're going to get started, which is pretty good at first interview. Like in terms of your first podcast episode, that's pretty awesome. And then we got some ringers too, guys. I mean, I'm so jacked for these podcast episodes. And then we'll also just be recording some of us talking about brands that, we love and products that we dig and stuff we think you guys will actually want to hear people talk about. And we're going to try and do it somewhat similarly to my videos, whereas if I'm going to talk about Elijah Craig, I'm going to tell you guys as much as I know about Elijah Craig. Not only how does it taste, of course that's important, but why is Elijah Craig a thing? Like, why does the brand exist? We'll try and get into some of that info. But Brian will be able to, he's a better, more refined taster, I think, in his ability to express the notes than I am. Not that I'm not a experienced taster, but I actually am still much better at tasting coffee than I am at bourbon / rye.
You should throw it out to Neat Nation. See what they might want to talk about, or
dudes,
hear us talk about rather.
You guys can slide into the DMs of Entry Proof Podcast on Instagram, or of course my DMs are now Brian's DMs. And let us know if you guys have show topics, or if there's a particular product you want us to break down, if there's a review you want to hear, let us know, because a lot of the show ideas that I've done actually on my channel have come from you guys, and so this is a labor of love. That's all it is. Just sitting with this one a while. I'm talking too much. Brian, what do you want to talk about while I continue to sip and nose this? I feel like I'm spiraling pretty quick. I went that afro phase and now the headband phase. I'm devolving quickly tonight.
No, I mean, when you put the headband back on, it made me wonder when the Entry Proof headbands are coming out.
Yeah. I mean, just throw a comment in the feed if you guys would buy Entry Proof headband. We can do that. Eric Sawyer drops another super chat for $2.39. $2.39 for a gallon of gas for the trip. Thanks, Eric. Appreciate it.
Cheers.
I mean, I imagine headbands are probably pretty cost effective. Like the t-shirts, you gotta charge $20. I try and keep it low, and it's still $20 to have it support in any way. That's almost a labor of love. All right. Well, we still got time. Todd Trent says Droopy Whiskey. So Entry Proof Podcast on Instagram? Yes, that is correct. We have posted nothing. So if you go to that username and you see absolutely nothing, then you are correct. That is what is supposed to be.
But they can also start emailing us at entryproofpodcast@gmail.com. I think that is the thing that I said.
Sweet. Yeah, don't go to Entry Proof. That's a guy named
exist.
Mark. That's a guy named Mark who we don't know. So don't go to Entry
Yeah,
Proof.
old blog about Podcast. 4 years old. Yeah. We figured in the modern era, the Creative Commons license is a lot shorter.
Yeah. We went through probably 4 or 5 different podcast names before we landed on one because there are so many different usernames and half of them don't get used, guys. So if you're on Instagram and you got a Bourbon feed and you don't use it, please delete it so somebody who wants to use it can use it because there are some dank names that people aren't using. Chasing Giants hit us with a super chat. Thanks, dog. If you do a barrel proof headband, I will buy it. You know, there's a lot of rad merch that I think Bourbon Geeks would buy. And I've already designed that Bottled and Bond t-shirt. I've got the artwork finalized. I just need to do it. But right now I'm putting like all my sweat equity into content. So before too long, we will roll out some stuff. There's also got to be some Neat Nation Neat Tasters. So if you guys haven't seen a Neat Taster, it looks like this. And we'll do some of these that say Neat Nation on them because you guys have asked for that crap, and I still haven't done it. So just be patient for me.
That's right.
Eric Sawyer says 7 followers for entry-level podcast. Entry-level? It shouldn't be entry-level podcast. It should be entry-proof. What are you looking at?
So we also got a video game podcast called Entry Level.
So Entry Proof Podcast now has 8 followers. I'm not even following it yet now.
No, not even.
Yeah, so there's no profile picture or anything, but I feel like you guys should get something for following it this early, but... All right. Brian, do you have any Midwinter Night's Dram around?
Not anymore. It's all finished.
Well, for the sake of Rob, who gave me these great whiskeys, I'm going to taste that one, and you can tell me what you thought about it while I taste it. You can try and recollect as best you can. Whoa, Todd Trent hit us with a $20 super chat.
Yeah, what's the
chat because he's a boss.
Oh, cheers, sir.
Yeah, so Todd says, to help with starting costs, let's freaking go. He didn't say freaking, I added that. That was for emphasis. Hashtag Entry Proof Podcast. Thanks, dog. All right, so here's what we're going to do.
One of my buddies, Chris.
Go ahead.
He slid in the messages saying, time to donate for me to upgrade my internet speed. Womp.
Yeah, it definitely seems to be a problem on your end, pal, but I don't know.
Sorry, everybody. Sorry, Neat Nation.
But you did the test. To be fair, everybody, Brian did an internet speed test at the start. We will figure it out. We will conquer this. I'll get there, and then we'll do it side by side and figure out what the dealio is. All right.
Before next week, I am going to have a different internet provider.
Canceled. We're canceling whoever your internet provider is. Okay, so here's what we're going to
cancel it.
We got 7 minutes left before 9. We're probably going to go to 9:15 again because I have to go to bed. So I need to keep tasting craft whiskeys, and otherwise there's no way I'm going to get to 100 given all the stuff we're going to be doing, Brian. So we can talk about Midwinter Night's Dram, and then you can stay on if you want while I taste a few craft whiskeys that were sent to me, and you can comment if you've had them. How many craft whiskeys have you had, Brian? Because I've been tasting and
probably
bourbons for years, but I haven't had very many craft whiskeys at all, which is why I started this 100 whiskeys in 2020 deal.
Right. I mean, what about some Old Carter? Do you have some Old Carter yet?
I have not. I have people telling me I should have Old Carter. Do they count as craft whiskey, though? I mean, I guess they do. It's pretty limited. Super limited, actually. I think I would, because I did say I would count people who are doing really unique things with sourcing, so long as they weren't, owned by a much larger conglomerate, They're privately owned, right? Right.
To my knowledge.
Okay.
Yeah, they're
All
they're
right.
putting a shop in here, just down the road from my roastery.
Sweet. That's pretty cool. I thought they were out in California.
Yeah, I don't know. I thought they're building right next to Justin's House of Bourbon downtown, but I could be
Well,
wrong.
you would know that better than I would because I live in Milwaukee.
Yeah.
All right. So the nose on Midwinter Night's Dram is whiny for sure. And I had done a little bit of hack. I had Midwinter Night's Dram a couple of years ago just at a bar, and then I just tried to. I was like, this wine rye mashup is kind of magical. It's pretty good. So I've been known to mix a little bit of like a Willet 4-year rye with a little bit of Cabernet, and I enjoy that quite a bit. I enjoy it a lot. But the man,
Now,
there's
what's
a
the scene and
clovey.
act? Is that on your sample?
Okay.
Does it say?
Yes. It's Act 8, Scene 3, 98.6 proof.
Okay, so it's newer.
Yeah. There's a clovey spice on the nose that's very pronounced. I mean, I get clove sometimes, but the clove it's big clove on this one for sure. And then I get red wine and rye spice.
Mm-hmm.
It is ridiculously chill on the palate, though, coming after that Jack barrel proof rye, which was hot. That was pretty hot. But coming off of that into this, I'm like, wow, this is just like apple juice. Yeah, it kind of tastes like a cran apple. Yeah. It's like if you put caraway seed in cran apple juice. That's what I'm getting right now. I feel like that's a pretty vivid picture, too. So caraway seed's actually what they put in rye bread sometimes to give it like a rye. If you guys didn't know, it's like sometimes when you think about rye bread, you taste more caraway than you taste rye. It's a more intense, kind of punchy thing. It's good. The Midwinter Night's Dram is good. It's not blowing me away right now after that Jack rye, though. But it's hard sometimes to go from one product to another like that. It doesn't really do something like Midwinter Night's Dram justice to compare it to a Jack single barrel proof rye, because it's a completely different product. We're talking about a finished non-barrel proof rye. And if my palate wasn't completely blown away by the Jack rye, it'd probably be like, oh, this is wonderful. And it's not bad right away. It's just mellow and sweet and kind of juicy. Another super chat from Rob White, RW on YouTube.
Cheers, sir.
He says, it's going to taste like water. Post Jack Daniel's single barrel proof rye. Cardamom on that dram for sure. Red wine love though. Yes, it's going to be a little mellow. So yes, if you're ever trying to do a tasting where you're truly honestly evaluating a product, try and put them in the same camp as best you can. So let me rinse my mouth and I'll come back to it. I'm getting called out here. Should gargle, maybe. Get that really, really clean. Oh, Brian, do you know Kyle Ramage?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Kyle found my channel via my appearance on the Bourbon Junkies. So Kyle's another coffee guy.
Okay.
And when I posted the story tonight that you were jumping on, he sent me just a one-word DM. He said, nice. Yeah.
Him and his wife visited not terribly long ago, and we had some coffee, and then up in the loft of the roastery, I brought we had some whiskeys as well. Had a good time.
Nice. Yeah, he seems like a good dude. I haven't really chatted with him. We've met now to connect, now that we know we have a lot in common. But we have not yet, because life and stuff. All right. I'm going to have another sippy sip of this, and then we'll get to some craft whiskeys, squad. Let's hit a few questions. Again, if you tagged me, there's a good chance I haven't seen it because I've been talking with Brian. So super chat if you for sure want me to see it. Otherwise, I'm going to try and hit some of these other questions while we got a second here. Tom says, Drew and not Drew, I have concerns about a podcast. I don't drive anymore since COVID. When am I supposed to listen to it? Fair question. Do you like mow the lawn or work out? Let's think of what reasons you would listen to a podcast. Maybe you are you're doing a crossword and you want to have something playing in the background. You're working a puzzle. I listen to podcasts when I either drive, when I'm practicing golf, like when I'm at the driving range, when I am mowing the lawn, as I mentioned. When else do I do it? Oh, when I work out. Yeah, when I run, when I'm on that elliptical.
Yeah. If he would just send us the general vicinity of his address, I'm going to pin a spot about 60 minutes away, and I'm going to continue to send samples to that address. And unless he wants those to be consumed by someone else, he'll have to go get them. He'll have to.
Yeah, don't put that past Tom. I think he's gonna send you his address right now. And now you're just gonna owe this guy samples the rest of your life.
That's okay. I got samples to send. That's fine.
Also, when you listen to podcasts, why should we do a podcast? Concerns about a podcast. Tom, one thing I would say is I'm going to try and drop as much of the content through YouTube as possible. So we're going to try and record in video format, and then we'll edit it down more in the audio to make it more digestible. But it may go up here kind of raw. And then if we're doing interviews and Brian and I aren't together, we'll just do it on YouTube Live like this. And we probably won't get to interact as much as we are like right now. But, we'll still probably hit like questions from the gallery at the end of those podcast episodes. So we're going to be dropping plenty of that entry-proof content right here through the Drew P. Whiskey channel. Matt Schwanda says, Drew P. Whiskey, glad that I found Baker Mayfield's whiskey channel. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. Chasing Giant says, one more super chat for being on Bourbon Junkies, the Bourbon Gods. I hope you're talking about me and Brian. Obviously, the Junkies have been doing it for a long time. And I was really thankful to be invited on their channel because I was super, super new. And, I had a few videos that were bangers for sure that, did well, but they were really gracious to have me on, and I really enjoyed it. So hats off to those guys. JD says, Droopy Whiskey, have you tried Smoke Wagon Small Batch? If not, I will send a bottle like the Doc Swinsons. JD, if you want to send me bottles of anything, I'm not going to say no. I will tell you, have had the uncut, unfiltered, and really enjoyed it. It was really swell, but I've not had the small batch. So, again, send what you will. I will say no to nothing. And when you guys send me stuff, I will do my level best to taste it on YouTube or on Instagram and, tag you guys. It's going to get a little bit harder as things kind of take off more. But I want this to be a community-based thing, and you have been so swell. So, thanks, JD. Appreciate that. All right.
Kyle Ramage sent a message in. He said, thanks for the word. Doing a dry week, but happy to. So, cheers, Kyle.
You cut out.
Miss you,
You
man.
cut out right at
Congrats to
you cut out,
your wife.
You cut out right at the end of the Kyle Ramage quote. I'll find it.
He said,
I see.
He said, doing a dry week. Happy to watch.
Cool. Got it. And then he just says, how does the Jack Daniels compare to the Willett? Is that Willett Family Reserve? Is that what that is? Because it's family estate? Or
the Willett Rye.
Not meant to, yeah, I thought it was Willett Rye. Jack Daniels is better. It's sweeter and deeper. I like the Willett Rye because it's really spicy and herbaceous, which I appreciate. But this Jack Rye is pretty good. I want more spice out of it, but that sweetness and depth is pretty good.
Right.
Okay. All right. Midwinter Night's Dram one last time, and then I got. Oops. Jeepers, guys. So just as an example of the quality peeps that we have in Neat Nation. Now, Entry Proof Nation. And you guys are still Neat Nation. You just also listen to Entry Proof. A local guy, Matt, he sent me... He's like, you want craft whiskeys? Here you go. So I've tasted 1 through 4. That was my second episode of the craft whiskey journey. So today, I think we're going to do 5 and 6, which I'm going to have to bring that up on my phone to find out what that was. So this is going to be craft whiskeys 9 and 10 for me in this journey. Tom Lynch says, my Willet Rye is super minty. Love it, though. Yeah, I get a lot of dill out of the ones I've had for sure. Minty dill. I like Willet's Family Estate, the 4-year rye better than any other bourbon release. I've had one Family Estate bourbon release, a 14-year. That was amazing. Like, that was fantastic. But their Old Bardstown, Bottled and Bond, the Old Bardstown Estate Bottle, Johnny Drum, Pure Kentucky, all that's Willet stuff. And I like their 4-year rye better than all of that. I just think that their rye is good and should be bought. But I wish their general release bourbon was better. That's just me, though. Okay. Gosh, guys, I'm sorry. I'm so behind. I'm just talking too much and not drinking enough. All right. Midwinter Night's Dram. Winey and delicious. I mean, I recommended this as the nightcap on Christmas Day. Like, if you're drinking whiskey on Christmas Day, what do you drink at the very end of the day? You drink Midwinter Night's Dram. I stand by that. I think that winey finish is kind of perfect. Is it the best rye ever? Obviously not, but it does its job in the right moment. Who are you texting, Brian?
Blake again. So he was just saying to let him know. I'm gonna let him know that we'll talk about some show notes when you're in town. That's no big deal.
So yeah, guys, we as a community, 106 people watching this. Blake Ribner from Bourboner, the Bourboner guy, sent Brian a text earlier, like, "Hey, when am I coming on the podcast, the Entry Proof podcast?" So now we as a community can hold Blake accountable to this claim that he's coming on the.
Well, and I was talking
podcast.
to him because I asked him. I said, "Hey, man, I didn't see your 2020 BTAC tasting," and he said that he didn't get media samples this year. Not to say that would be the podcast, but I want to know. Every year, I want to know. I want to know what Blake thinks about the BTAC line. Come on now.
Yeah, so if you guys don't listen to Bourbon Pursuit, it's a good podcast. My favorite episodes are their Bourbon Community Roundtables. That's how I was introduced to Blake and Bourboner. Actually, I listened to Bourbon Pursuit before I was a member of the Bourboner Facebook group. And Blake is one of my favorite personalities on there. Of course, Ryan, People's Champ. It's true. He is a People's Champ. So I like Ryan. I like Blake. And then, why am I blanking on his name? I think it's Brian, actually. Brian Hara, the law guy, who wrote Bourbon Justice. I read that book. I like his perspective a lot as well. But yeah, I would love to have Blake on our show, hopefully before too long. All right. So I'm tasting, just to keep you guys engaged, hopefully, and tracking. We're way off the rails today. We had a very simple agenda. Did we cover everything in our agenda, actually?
I still don't know anything about when you're coming or that you're coming, and I'm definitely not getting any honey roll things. So
yeah, you're not getting biscuits. I am leaving.
Couldn't care less.
Butt crack of dawn tomorrow. I will be leaving Milwaukee, Oak Creek technically, at 6:00. So I got pee breaks. Probably 2 hours in, I'm going to have to stop for number 2, depending on how much coffee I have. And then pee breaks beyond that. TMI, sorry guys. It's the reality of driving. But
it was new information to me that we were gonna meet at Bardstown. I thought we were gonna meet in Louisville and then just kick on some Run DMC and make the trek. But
Yeah, we can do that too. So the
whichever.
Airbnb, I got a 3-day Airbnb in Louisville, so we can
Okay.
stop. I'll come to your house, and then we can jump in a car and run down to Bardstown.
I'll be at
And
the
then we have to.
roastery for the first part of the day, so we'll do whatever.
Okay, yeah, I'll call you. We got to decide where to eat because Bardstown Bourbon Company has an amazing restaurant, but
And
then
I've never eaten there.
dude, oh, I have eaten there like right after it opened. So good. And then, but I've not been to the bar at Willet.
You can't not eat at the bar at Willet at some point in time, and they're closed on Sunday. I'm not kidding. Right now they have oysters that are.
So we should do a bang bang. We should eat at Bardstown, and then we should go to Willet and eat again.
I don't get my figure by saying no to food. It is apparent I will consume things.
All right, craft whiskey. Let's figure out. I got to bring up the images from Matty Pletz and see what we're tasting here. Okay. So I'm not going to taste these blind, but this is a good side-by-side, I feel like, actually, squad. I have the Woodinville 90 proof bourbon here. And then I have Wilderness Trail 100 proof, bottled in bond. So Woodinville and Wilderness Trail, which if you saw them on the shelf next to each other, you could think they were the same thing. That's my case. The branding between these two companies is like, guys, you gotta differentiate, okay? Driftless Glen is kind of similar too. Everybody's using these kind of squat square bottles, which they look great for sure, but there needs to be some greater differentiation. So here we go. We're going to whiskeys number 9 and 10 in the craft whiskey journey, which is good. We're on pace now to break 100. If we can do 10 a month, that will be enough. All right. Brian, have you had either Woodinville or Wilderness Trail products?
I've had some Wilderness Trail, but they have a little bit of a mix. They got their Weeder, their bourbon, like some different ryes. So I've had a Manglamesh of Wilderness Trail. Nothing specific of note.
I may have to drop another one here because not only do I have the bottled in bond, I also have what is that? A single barrel. It's a very fuzzy picture. All right, guys, I'm going for 3. I was gonna be careful with what I drank today. I've been doing small pours though, and I will do small pours here. So all right, so we're gonna go Woodinville 90 proof bourbon. Then we're going 100 proof bourbon from Wilderness Trail, and then single barrel strength 114 proof from Wilderness Trail as well. Right away, I hate when people say right away. Like, right away? Here's what I taste or experience. Like, of course.
Right away.
Immediately. The first thing I noticed, when I say that, I mean the first thing I noticed was that there is there's more sweetness in the nose on the Woodinville, but I also get more grain. It's like fresh baked bread out of the oven, which I like that, but then I don't like that in craft distilleries because the grainy notes are not pleasant. So it is definitely sweeter in the Woodinville than the Wilderness Trail, but I don't get any off-putting like fresh sawdust, sesame seeds, which I generally do not like at all in Wilderness Trail or in craft distilleries. Then in the barrel proof, not a lot of alcohol, actually. I mean, we're not talking about a major heavy hitter here. What was the proof on that? What I say, 114? It's a little bit sweeter than the standard one, and I get very little alcohol on the nostrils. What are you tasting now, Brian?
I keep hitting more on that NBC rye, just to have a little something.
Michter's? Is that what you meant?
No, the Nashville Barrel Company, NBC.
Oh, and okay, yeah, right. Well, don't assume we all know what that means.
Sorry.
I feel sorry for people getting into bourbon, rye, whiskey, Like the acronyms that we all use, the abbreviations, it's bonkers. Like to try
Right.
and keep up with. Like with this Jack Daniel's barrel proof single barrel, JD, SB. Like you got to know this language. If you don't know this language and you get into a Facebook group, somebody's talking about a product and they drop JD, SB, you're like, I guess I'm just going to shoot myself in the face because I have no idea what's happening right now.
I'm sure
All
there's a
right.
spreadsheet or something like that.
The Woodinville is not bad. It is very sweet and tastes like a younger Buffalo Trace. There is the reminiscence of New Make Spirit still on the palate, kind of like raw white whiskey, but it's really sweet. So like tons of promise, I think, in the distillate at Woodinville, but I just want more age out of it. I want depth that I'm just not getting, which is a bummer. But it's good, just not great. Needs more age. Coming over to Wilderness Trail then, which is Eastern Kentucky, right? Brian, you're here to tell me when I'm right.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember specifically where they are. I know I debated going there, but where it is yes, Eastern, outside of Lexington, maybe. I don't know. I'd have to pull it up on a map to be true.
Huh. So the Wilderness Trail 100 proof, I actually do get a little bit of, not full like piney sawdust, but raw oak. It's got some heat. It's got a little more depth than the Woodinville, but it's still, man, I want to love craft whiskey so much, guys. Like, I want to be like, oh, this is the best. And I think they will compete. I think they will compete with a lot of the big distilleries, but we're just falling short right now because we're pushing out 4-year bourbons. Brian, why don't you tell the good people what you feel about these young whiskeys? Because I know you have an opinion here that's valid.
Man, so, all right, where do I want to go with it? To me, we're seeing people pull off non-age dated. They're bringing out whiskey earlier. And to be fair, they're putting in practices that can simulate age to some degree,
Heat
and
cycling.
yep. And so they're trying to get a little bit more maturity with a little bit younger product. But to me, I want complexity and I want depth. Like the way that I see it is like, I can talk about flavors, but I feel like there's got to be some sort of, I don't know, it's just some sort of depth to the pour. And so aside from some of the grainy notes that you talk about, you can have a whiskey with great flavors and it might have fruitiness or caramels or interesting spice. But I generally find with younger whiskeys, it doesn't have depth. And my biggest problem with that is that the more companies or more brands that put that out there, as you have people who are getting into whiskey, they start to say, this is what whiskey is. This is what the flavor is. It's because that's what you can find. And to me, I just feel like it does a disservice to other whiskeys, not necessarily older whiskeys, but just other whiskeys. And I noticed that with some of my friends in town because, they drink a lot of, you mentioned it earlier about Willet, that you're not necessarily a fan of the 6-year, 7-year, 8-year make of their own bourbon. And they have great proof and they have a great pocket of flavor, but I just find a lot of them are missing a little bit on that depth that I hope we see in another year or so, maybe 2-3 years. But in general, with younger MGP stuff and some of these other producers, I can hit a couple of flavor pockets and that's about it. It just doesn't give me everything that I'd hope to find in a great pour.
Right. Which is just somewhat, it's somewhat to be expected in that it's a young
Right.
distillery. They're trying to make some money, which, guys, if you're getting into bourbon, rye, like you're going to sell it, it's kind of a crap show to have all these capital costs, like all these investments you got to make, and then you got to make stuff, pay people, and then wait until you can sell your product. Like, that's just generally tough. You gotta have a lot of money going into it. So, like, these distilleries have to try and release their stuff as early as they can to get some cash flow. So it's totally understandable, and it's exciting to taste some stuff and be like, I see promise here, but I'm probably not going to buy it until it's like 8 to 10 years old, which sucks because they kind of need the cash flow. So it's a bit of a catch-22 as we want to root for craft distilleries because competition for the big guys is good. It makes everybody better. Like, if you have to compete with somebody who's making better whiskey than you, it should make you make better whiskey. So we like that. At the same time, the competition that will be there for the big guys is still making inferior whiskey because age is such a crucial component. That's all I have to say.
I've been pleasantly surprised with some, but we live in this weird world where again you're in coffee with me. I don't generally find the price point be an equation for overall value the way that it is with whiskey. And so you start seeing these craft makers, and it has younger juice, but the price is still in a lot of cases a bit prohibitive. And it's, is it worth that justification when the results aren't what you'd hope for?
Yeah, it's tough. I think, those who have followed Droopy Whiskey, those who have been members, citizens, if you will, of Neat Nation, know my affection for New Riff, because I feel like, well, number one, their 4-year whiskey was redonk compared to many others. I didn't get new make spirit notes generally. Didn't get a lot of graininess, a lot of spice. Like, they delivered a lot of flavor in their 4-year whiskey, and then their single barrels, some of them were really, really phenomenal. So it's not to say it can't be done. Like, there are, as you said, craft distilleries out there doing some really interesting things and delivering a lot at a good value, which is where I was going and then forgot with New Riff. And is that their releases were in the $50 range. Like, their bottle and bond is like $45, and then their single barrel is $55. That's a barrel proof craft distillery dropping $55. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
And I wish that's what other people would do. But, like, I think about Rabbit Hole, their stuff, not even barrel proof, and it's really expensive. And then their only special release, the Boxer Grail, whatever, 6-year cast strength rye, was how much? Like, what was it? It was hundreds of dollars.
200, I thought.
Yeah, right. Ridiculous.
250? I don't know.
Like, I mean, is it because they're in Louisville and they have a lot of funding and they have a beautiful distillery? Maybe. But
dude, I don't know. I mean, the distillery is beautiful, but I know nothing about their juice. I've had some of their early stuff and it was garbage, and I've not gone back.
Well, maybe we'll have them on the podcast and we'll say, guys, tell us what's happening.
Maybe.
Because I heard good stuff about the Boxer Grail good grief.
Yeah,
limited
definitely.
release. But I'm not going to pay $200 for a 6-year rye. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
No. All right, let's hit some comment. Well, you know what? If you guys have any comments, questions, remarks you want Brian and I to get to, we're wrapping up. Let me just do a summary of these 3 craft whiskeys, and then we'll hit a few questions, and then we're going to bring it home because we got a lot of whiskey to get to over the next few days. So, Woodinville, really nice cherry nose, actually. Reminds me of Eagle Rare on the nostrils. Does not remind me of Eagle Rare on the palate. Just a little bit rough, a little bit of particle board. It's okay. Not great. Then Wilderness Trail, 100 proof. Slightly easier on the nose, but the new make spirit is still very present in the palate of their bottled and bond. I've had 4-year whiskeys that were spicier and deeper, more interesting than this. It's just like, it's, again, okay. Kind of leaves in my mouth with a little bit of a gin, like a little bit of juniper in there. A suggestion of dill, like, man, if this is older, it's going to be great. Even when I look at it, it's like, man, that's just pale. It just feels like the whiskey is not interacting with the wood at the level that I want. I wonder what the char level of their barrels is, too, because it just feels like even, this is a bottled and bond product. It's 4 years. Feels like it should have a deeper hue to it. All right, then Wilderness Trail single barrel proof. I do get a little bit of a more spicy nose. And everything's kind of turned up a notch except for the youth. It's sweeter. It feels like the raw wood has dropped off. And it's just more like hot honey. Like honey with alcohol behind it. Which I like okay. Not a ton of spice, I guess. But no raw wood, no new make spirit, so that's relatively pleasant. So this Wilderness Trail single barrel proof, I like that a lot. Actually, for a craft whiskey, I would probably enjoy a bottle of this. Whereas the other two show a lot of promise, but still need more age. So that's craft whiskeys. What am I at? 9 through 11 then. I was going to go 9 and 10. Now we're through 11. Man, we've been efficient in this stream. We've talked about the new podcast, Entry Proof Podcast. Kentucky trips coming up. We're meeting at Bardstown Bourbon Company tomorrow. No, we're not. We're meeting in Louisville, then driving to Bardstown Bourbon Company. And
we're meeting somewhere between you and me.
It's going to be great. It's going to be awesome. And you know what? I got to shout out my wife. She probably will not watch this, but you guys, my wife is awesome because she is super pregnant. She is 7 months and a couple weeks pregnant, and I am leaving her with my 2 kids, my 5-year-old and my 3-year-old, to go make a podcast. So I have to get her something awesome and treat her like the absolute freaking queen she is. So, honey, if you ever watch this...
Well, fortunately for you, if they don't sell them there.
Go ahead. I was saying something nice to my wife.
Art Edibles, is it?
And interrupt.
No. I was just saying, Art Edibles in town, they sell chocolate Glencairns. You can get her a chocolate Glencairn, fill it with not alcohol, and let her go to town, right?
Yeah. She loves the chalkies for sure.
Or a derby hat. I don't know. Whatever.
Anyway, I'm not sure I'll get her something from Kentucky. Bottom line is I owe her, and you guys owe her if you like the content that we drop. So, you know what? She actually has an Etsy shop. It's called Second to the Right Art. You can follow it on Instagram. And if you like watercolor, quirky drawings and paintings, you can buy something from her Etsy shop. You would make her day. All right. Enough shameless plugs to my wonderful wife. Terrence McDonald says, best first new Riff to try. Can order through Sealbox. Yeah, get a single barrel. And if you can get a Sealbox pick of new Riff, which I doubt you can right now, you should do that. So I've enjoyed Blake's picks. So Blake, who we talked about, Bourbon or Blake, he actually started Sealbox. We will try and have him on this podcast. He wants to be on this podcast, apparently. Looking forward to that. Definitely recommend you guys check out steelbox.com, SEELBACHS.com. So now Blake owes us because we're plugging his website where he sells kinds of craft spirits and a lot of single barrels on there. So check it out for sure. Todd Trent, wow, what a better half you have. Yes, that is correct. Dan Barber, crown that queen, no doubt. No doubt. All right. Do we have anything else, Brian, to chat about before I see you tomorrow?
Whatever works for you. I'm just looking forward to you having a safe drive down.
Yeah. So I'm going to go crash hard and sleep well. Get up, make some coffee. And I'm going to listen to... I got some catching up to do on the No Laying Up Golf podcast. Probably going to listen to that. Marketing podcast, Akimbo with Seth Godin. Really like that. It's a great podcast. How I Built This with Guy Raz on NPR is a fantastic podcast. And then, what else? That's probably going to set me up pretty well. Whiskey podcast, you guys. I mean, I mentioned Bourbon Pursuit already. And then the Dad's Drinking Bourbon. Brian, you mentioned that earlier as well. That's sort of a fun way to go through reviews. Like, I don't think anybody just does straight reviews as good as the Dad's Drinking Bourbon, where it's fun and it's technical. So I will be listening to a lot of that crap tomorrow in my 6.5-hour drive to meet up with Brian. But I will check in with you all on Instagram. So if you're not following me already, get over to Instagram, follow me at Drew P. Whiskey, because that's where I'm going to be posting my journey. And then Brian and I will begin posting from the Entry Proof Podcast Instagram as well, and keep you guys up to speed with everything that's happening over in the podcast department, which is a lot of fun stuff. It should be a really, really fun weekend. You can also follow Brian at Abandon Bourbon. If you ever want to see somebody pull some amazing bottles on the regular, just follow Brian. You're going to get all kinds of stuff. All kinds of yummy stuff in your feed. Brian, anything to say to the kind folks before we sign it off here?
Hey, thanks for bearing with me with the internet. Great to meet everybody. Hope to see you all and talk with you all again more very, very soon. Look forward to bringing you some interesting stuff in a different way via the Entry Proof Podcast.
Sweet. Yeah, the stream wasn't as bad as I thought when we were doing our test. I thought it was going to get rough, but it was okay. So, Brian, thanks for jumping on, man. I'll see you tomorrow. Squad, thanks for tuning in tonight. Thanks for chilling with us. Thanks for contributing through your super chats and through buying t-shirts. We're just stoked to bring you guys some really rad whiskey content here in the days ahead. So, again, I hope you enjoyed. Stay healthy, stay safe, and per usual, remember to keep it neat. Bye now.